All right. Hello, everybody. This is Todd from the Table Ready Podcast, and today we have a special guest for the show. He's no stranger to podcasts in general, or a stranger to me. It's Ken. And would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure thing. And I will say ahead of time that I may not be a stranger to you, but I'm probably stranger than most. So we'll start and end there. So I just said my name's Ken. Um, I'm a co-host of yours on another podcast called Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy. I run my own show called The Rambling Star Wars Fan. Every Wednesday night on YouTube, I join my friend Mike Hinton, sometimes our friend John Scalise, on the Inflatable Falcon. And occasionally, I'm a special guest on Around the Dejeric Table from the Bantha Milk podcast. And I got to say, this is the very first podcast that I've ever been on that's not related to Star Wars in any way. So this is going to be a first for me. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm glad you could join. Ken was one of the winners from our giveaway from having a one year episode, 1 year of doing the podcast. And of course, that's right around the time that we did go to YouTube. So I wanted to do something special. So we did have Logan on probably a couple months ago already. And now we're going to have Ken on. Ken, do you know anything about Warhammer 40K?
I know probably 5 things. And here are the 5 things I know.
Okay.
It's a game. It's
You got that right.
Tabletop game, if we're going to be even more specific.
Oh.
That's a turn-based strategy kind of thing.
Okay.
That has this incredibly rich history and lore to it. And occasionally at pop culture conventions, you will see people wearing this head-to-toe wild suits of armor for these characters called Space Marines. That's what I know. So anything else that you can tell me beyond that is going to be bonus for me.
Okay. Well, I kind of figured that. So I kind of based this whole episode on teaching you what Warhammer 40K is and what you're going to see if you would be interested in either. And I'm taking a broad spectrum approach here. So I want to touch on a little bit of everything. And then as you know, if we got questions, we can narrow down. You were right. It is a tabletop strategy game, but the game's only part of the experience. It is a model building, just like, building model cars, model planes, model ships, something like that. It's the exact same thing as that. The only difference is once you have all your models together, you get to put them on a table and you get to play with all your friends. So in my experience with 40K, and I'm sure a whole lot of others, games go anywhere from playing with your buddies in your basement or your garage or whatever, and they actually go up to there are stores that host games. There are actually events, local events, tournaments, stuff like that. And that actually goes all the way up to international tournaments. So there's tournaments, big tournaments around the country, like in Las Vegas, San Diego, Atlantic City, Chicago. But there's also ones in London. There's a international tournament in Europe that moves from place to place. And then there's ones in Australia. And even some of the more interesting things is there's a group that has a tournament on January 1st on the beaches in Hawaii. And there's also another group that does it on the beaches of Normandy. So,
oh my goodness.
And I don't know if they still run it, but there was one in San Diego that played on the deck of the aircraft carrier, and I don't remember which one's out there, but the decommissioned aircraft carrier that's out there in San Diego. So they play a tournament on that aircraft carrier.
Please tell me that one of these tournaments, the prize is like a giant sword or something.
Actually, one of the biggest tournament prizes is called the Slayer Sword.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it is.
I was just guessing at that. That's funny.
That's got to be. It's one of the Games Workshop, or well, they're just Warhammer now, but it was one of Games Workshop's ultimate prizes for commanders. So I have not been. I'm not very worldly, so I've only been to tournaments in 3 different states, but I have been in stores in 7 different states. So I get around a little bit, but I don't really get around a lot.
Do they have like a passport where you go and get a stamp at each of the stores? And
they used to have a program like that where you could go to different stores and you could get different things. Now they have you get coins. Actually, let me see. I might have one right here. Maybe or not. But if you go to the Warhammer store, I don't. But if you go to the Warhammer store every month, you can actually collect a coin for making a purchase. Let's see if I got one in my thing here. No, I don't know where I put them. They're probably upstairs. They kind of just float around. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so you can get a different faction coin every month, and then it changes, usually depending on what's getting an update or a new rules or new models or whatever. They have run a couple different programs. They ran a program for a while called the Crusader program, where you got a trading card for every thing that you've done in the hobby. And of course, just in the beginning of every year, they give you like a bingo card and with different subjects, and then you can get a stamp for each one, and then if you get bingo, you get a store prize too.
It also reminds me almost of like the Boy Scouts, where if you do A, B, and C, you earn a merit badge. If you do X, Y, Z, you can earn a different merit badge.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like that, but all game related.
I think gamers and fandoms in general, doesn't matter what kind of fandom it can be a Harry Potter fandom, a Pokemon fandom, or whatever. A certain aspect of it is also collecting, gathering things, whether it's action figures or coins or art that's related to it. So it continues to amaze me how involved Warhammer really is.
And it really is. I mean, not only so I'm just here to talk about 40K because they do run other games. So they started off with a fantasy game as well as 40K. I think the fantasy one came before the space one, but I'd have to check that to be sure. But they do have a fantasy game. They do have the Warhammer 40K, which is extensive in its own right. And they've actually updated the fantasy game into a new game. They kind of closed off the old world and finished the story and moved into a new one.
And is the fantasy one similar to like a Dungeons and Dragons, like that kind of a role-playing thing, or is it also turn-based strategy stuff?
Nope, it's turn-based strategy as well. Okay. So, in fact, you get blocks of armies. And this I have here. Oh, as long as I don't pull the computer out. And I should have got my props ready before. But, so these are goblins. And in the old world, you did rank and file troops. I don't know if you can see them or not.
Looks like there's like 20 things on there.
There's 20 models on there. And each one's an individual. And then you can lose them individually. They each have a single wound, and they each have a single point price. So including, you have a leader character with a sword. You have a standard bearer, and then somewhere in there is a musician. I don't know where he's at right now. Oh, he ended up in the back. So he's got a horn to blow. So the fantasy is all rank and file like that. When they updated from the fantasy, they did more like the skirmish. So they all have round bases, just like Warhammer 40K does.
Okay.
So, so Warhammer as a company, of course, was started by Games Workshop. In 1987, they decided to put a game out called Space Crusade, and what it was an extension of, and it was supposed to be a competition for Dungeons and Dragons. So when Dungeons and Dragons, they were doing that role playing element, and of course you could only pick like an elf, a dwarf, a human fighter, a wizard, so on. They decided that they were going to do the same thing, except set it in space. You could play as a rogue trader, you could play as a space marine, or a number of different single characters, and then they gave you like a squad of guys to play with. It was actually called Rogue Trader at that point. Rogue traders are imperial tradesmen. They basically, like a smuggler would be in Star Wars.
Okay.
And like a smuggler pirate, where he would have his own crew and stuff like that. So, I never played in Rogue Trader. That was before my time. But I started in second edition, where it actually changed to be like an army. And you did army composition. They were, again, everything has its own point cost. So you had to build the miniatures, point out the armies, and then you could play 1,000 points versus 1,000 points, or 2,000 points fights. Gonna do this. All right. Our friend here has 2 Rogue Trader era rhinos. Wow, that's pretty cool. That's even before my time. So
Now, do you ever go to like vintage toy shops or garage sales or whatever and see any of these things, like find them out in the wild, or do you just get all your stuff from online places or stores and stuff like that?
So mostly, so you can get them any which way. I mean, there's secondhand vendors. There's actually people that 3D print these models. There are, obviously you can go to the store. The nice thing is, like, you can go to any hobby store that has that'll carry Games Workshop, and you can order almost anything from them and get it shipped to the store. There are also Warhammer specific stores, so they always have tables and painting nights, and so you can just go in and hang out and paint your army and play with other people that show up. So,
and I know I've heard you say this before when it comes to the miniatures. In order for them to be table ready, they need to have at least 3 colors on them. Is that a Todd rule, or is that a Warhammer 40K rule, or?
So that's actually, the 3 color minimum was an old Warhammer rule. So, and I think it still stands, but I think they're kind of pushing to make it more colors, just to make it, because they, as part of the gaming experience, you want to play against nicely painted, built armies. And most people understand that you're not going to have, not everybody has the same skill at painting. So some people, what they're good paint, they're well, they put 10 hours into the squad and made it look nice, is not the same as, somebody else who's just an amazing painter that, they could put out a squad in like 2 hours, and then it's like you would put that up in a museum. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So,
but the paint itself, the design that you put on the figures doesn't necessarily play into the actual playing of the game. It's just one of those. It enhances it.
Correct. It enhances it. Like I said, the rule in house, as it was in I think fourth edition, was you had to have three colors. You had to have your base color for your models. You had to have trim, and then you had the weapons painted. Like I said, the rules have I think they've got a little tighter where they want shading and they want highlighting and stuff like that. If you're playing in a Games Workshop tournament, if you're playing like you're playing with your buddies, it doesn't matter. I know in ninth edition, so we're in 10th edition now.
Holy cow!
Yeah, it's been since '87, so things have changed over the years. But in like ninth edition, they actually incorporated it in the rules where you could earn up to 100 points during a game, and 10 of those points were based on if your army was battle ready.
Wow.
Or table ready. Yeah.
And that's in those official kind of tournaments.
Yes, that was in the official tournaments. So if you brought gray models, or if you brought just something that you primed and put a splash of color on, you could lose those points depending on the judges.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I guess in that case, the artistry does, if you're trying to play at that upper level of the game, the artistry does matter.
Oh yeah, and there is what they call the Golden Demon Award, and that is just for painting. So they do different categories like squad. They do individual model, large model, like a centerpiece model, and dioramas. The whole works. Like there's probably 30 different categories, and then there's sci-fi or 40K related, and then there's fantasy related ones.
Now this may be getting way ahead of your rhythm here, but I'm curious. So you've got the models, which are the characters, for lack of better words, the combatants.
Right.
And you got the bigger things that are almost like vehicles, tanks, that sort of mentality. And then there's the terrain. Now, when it comes to the terrain, is it just put out there arbitrarily, or do you have like a game master who sets up a field, and then the two armies show up and have to battle on that field?
So if you're playing, obviously, if you're playing at home, you can set up the table however you want. And we do plenty. We do city fights, we do forest fights, we do, I have a battle mat that is like a deck of a carrier or an spacecraft or something. But you can do whatever you want. Now, when you get to tournaments, there is like a tournament standard setup. And they do consist of, there's a lot of ruins, like so.
Okay.
Where they just use corners of buildings for cover. We also have, this is some Warhammer 40K terrain from Games Workshop. It's old, but, and then there's even buildings. And these are cardboard and plastic, and these are a little older too. And then there's even stuff like, excuse my reach here, statues.
Wow.
Trying to make sure you can see it.
Yeah, it looks fantastic.
Yeah, and these just come as gray plastic, and then just like the model
plastic that you get a car in or something like that.
Yep, exactly. They just come in sprues just like everything else, and they got to be primed and painted and glued together first. Because I think this one's like probably 7 or 8 pieces by itself, even though it looks like one solid chunk.
And is the battle board, is that established before the game happens, or is it something like we're in the middle of the game and I'm like, I'm gonna drop a statue from the sky?
No. So there are some caveats, but generally once the terrain's established, it doesn't change.
Okay.
There are some things like there's huge buildings that you can put up. There's trench lines, like walls that you can put up as part of your army. Like you pay points out of your army to put them up, and then your guys can hide behind them and shoot, essentially, which gives them a cover save, so they're harder to kill.
So it sounds like it can be super involved then.
Yes, it is. Generally speaking, once the terrain's set up, nothing gets moved, though.
Okay.
So if you have hills or forests or buildings or whatever, once they're down on the table and you start the game, none of that changes. I mean, realistically, people bump the table and they get moved all the time, but generally speaking,
I can't call in an airstrike and take out the thing you're hiding behind.
no, you can't do that.
Damn it.
In fact, most of the terrain, most of the actual terrain like this, you can't blow it up. It's just considered a standard piece. Now, the stuff that some of the items that you bring in, like there's bunkers for a couple different armies, and like I said, some of those the defense lines and stuff like that, they do have a toughness value and wounds, so you can destroy them.
Okay.
So usually if it's part of the army, it has something that a rating where it can be destroyed.
Okay.
So the table size is fairly set up. Obviously, depending on the size of the game, if you're doing a smaller army, you're using a smaller amount of the table. If you're doing a bigger game, the standard right now is it's 60 inches by 44 inches for the 2,000 point fight.
It's almost like 5x4 then, roughly speaking.
Yes, precisely. The table that I have is 6 foot by 4 foot. So I have just 3 pieces of plywood that I have lined up, and then I can butt them all together, and I screw them together so they don't move too much. And then all my battle mats, I actually have my battle mats are 6 foot by 4 foot, but I actually bought these hazard stripes to mark off areas that aren't part of the battlefield.
Okay.
So, and that's nice because I can put the hazard stripes down, and then like we can put models on the side. We can put like a dice tray down to roll dice in, stuff like that. And then that's not on the table, and it doesn't mess up any of the models while we're playing, because casualties do happen. Model casualties.
Almost like chess. So you take off this pawn and that knight kind of thing.
Correct, of course. So, what's a war game without, shooting at enemies? So, all right. So, Games Workshop actually, so I want to get back on track a little bit, and then we'll run back through here. Games Workshop is actually based out of Nottingham in the UK, like the Sheriff of Nottingham, same kind of thing. It is like a lot of people actually go there and visit. They actually have a full-size APC statue in the front, as well as a full-sized Rhino or Space Marine. Sorry, full-size Space Marine, or actually probably like a 15-foot tall Space Marine statue out front. Yeah, it's huge.
Because every time I see the people in costume, I think they're wearing like those construction stilts inside their armor, because they just seem bigger than normal sized people.
Yeah. So I mean, they are when they do the actual. So a Space Marine is actually a normal Space Marine is an 8-foot tall warrior. He's an 8-foot tall human, and then of course he is inside of a power armored suit. So they tend to be almost 8 to 10 feet tall altogether. So so when people make cosplays of them, they are huge. They are incredibly huge. And even like the shoulders on a Space Marine, they are spaced out from people. And usually the collars on the armor are actually almost up to their jawline. And then, of course, the head goes on top of it. Like they kind of space everything out.
Yeah, I continue to be amazed by them, because even like just one of the shoulder bells seems like from side to side, like 18 to 20 inches across.
Yeah.
Like a hubcap almost.
Right. So, yeah. So, sorry, we got a chat, but Sue said that we're not online. So, but we're just going to keep rolling here because I can record it. So when you go to Games Workshop Center itself, they do actually have huge dioramas of probably like 10,000, 20,000 point fights. They have big ones with Space Marines and Tyranids and Imperial Guard and stuff like that. And of course, you don't know what much this is, so you know what the Space Marines are.
I know Space Marines.
So, they have tables that you can play there at Games Workshop itself. You can rent a table. I think you have to put a deposit down, but you can actually play a game there. And then they actually have a actual British pub on the premises called Bugman's Bar, and you can sit there and have a beer and some food with your game right there on the premises at Games Workshop where they
Oh, that's cool.
the corporate center.
It's like going to Lucasfilm and having lunch outside by the Yoda fountain.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's exactly the same thing. And you can actually do like pickup games there and whatever. So, all right. So of course, they created 2 games when they started, and we talked about this a little bit. They did a fantasy and then Warhammer 40K. In 2001, they also got the rights to produce the Lord of the Rings strategy battle game. So when the movies came out, they started making models for that. And then, of course, there's also skirmish level games. So if you don't want to play the big 2,000 point fights or 3,000 point fights, whatever it is, you can actually play some of the skirmish games. Kill Team is just like one squad and maybe a character, so it's maybe like 8 to 10 guys. Space Hulk is actually a game where you put Space Marines in Terminator armor and they fight inside a wrecked spaceship. And then there's a game called Necromunda, which is just normal human gangs inside the hive cities, the cities on the Imperial worlds. And those are the ones that they have currently. They do have other ones that have come and gone. There's actually a smaller scale game where it takes I showed you my knight that I have painted like Boba Fett. It's over there. I won't grab it right now. So he's probably about that big. Well, they actually have models that are much bigger than that for Warhammer 40K. And then there's a game where they shrink those bigger ones down to small sized models so you can have bigger fights with smaller models.
Gotcha.
So, and it's too many rules for me to keep up with. So I try to stay with some of the more basic ones. I'm a big fan of Kill Team. I played a couple games of that. We used to play Necromunda all the time because it's just like normal humans playing. Human gangs fighting underneath in the slums of the city, like the slums of Coruscant.
Just trying to
It would
survive,
start.
kind of thing.
Yep, just trying to survive and make their way out of the slums. And then Space Hawk's a good, easy game. It only takes maybe half hour, 45 minutes to play a mission. You only start with maybe 5 guys on we'll say the good guy side, and then the other team gets almost like an endless supply of monsters that keep coming at you. And you have like some kind of mission where you have to pick something up, or you just have to get to the other end of the board or something like that. And it's all like cavernous hallways and stuff like that,
with surprises around every corner.
Yeah. The enemies start off as blips, and then you don't know how many miniatures are at that blip until you can actually see it. It's kind of fun, and it's kind of creepy, almost like in Alien 2, the movie, or Aliens, I should say. When they're standing there and all those blips start coming at them on the scanner.
And they didn't realize they were in
Aliens.
the ceiling.
Right, exactly. It's exactly like that. So, yeah, so that's one of the games that's out there. So let's get into some of the universe, so you can understand some of the stuff that we're doing. Yeah. So the way that I would explain 40K is, imagine taking Lord of the Rings. So you have humans, elves, dwarves, halflings, all kinds of fantasy creatures, races, and then install it directly into our galaxy 38,000 years from now. And if you want to jump onto that, there's a ton of 80s and 90s movie references inside some of the races and classes and units in the game. So, and just to explain the setting a little bit more, it's considered the dark age of technology. So nothing has been created in the last 8 to 10,000 years. And I know this is a big scope of time, but there's been no technological advancements. The Emperor of Mankind, he sits on the golden throne, and we'll get more into that later. He's a beacon for all mankind. So they literally use that golden throne, which is on Earth, or on Terra, as they call it, as a beacon so that they can navigate around the galaxy. Okay. The Imperium is basically holding on by a thread. There's so many outside forces that are just trying to destroy humanity that they are doing everything they can just to keep ground with them. There's obviously humans, there's elves, which they call Eldari. There's dwarves. Like I said, they're actually considered leagues of Votan. There's ogres, which are they're actually considered a subhuman race or an abhuman race. They're called Ogrin or Bulgrin. And there's even hobbits, which they call ratlings. They're incredibly resilient, and they're very good at hiding. And so the Imperium usually gives them sniper rifles and says, go shoot things. Some of the other things that show up, there's actually robot skeletons, much like the Terminators, like from Arnold Schwarzenegger, I'll be back. But they actually have like an Egyptian twist to their theme, where they actually have different dynasties, and their overlords. There's a lot to that.
Now, are these
But
folks trying to destroy humanity because humanity stinks, or because we have all the resources they want, or they like what's their beef with us?
okay, so I'm going to come back a little bit, and right around. So this is set in the 40,000th year of our existence. Somewhere around 25,000, we decided the Emperor of Mankind. He's the same guy. He's still around now as he was then. He's basically lives forever. So as much human as you think he is, he might not be. But he decided that, well, actually, let me go back just a little bit farther than that. At some point in our existence, we sent ships out to all the different planets that we could find in the galaxy that could sustain life. When they got to now they were called generational ships because it took them generations to get there. So the people that left on the ship were gone. They were died of old age well before they even got to wherever they were going. They didn't have light speed. They didn't have warp drives. They didn't have anything like that. They just sailed, took a ship into space, and just went. They went out and colonized all kinds of planets across the galaxy. And then an event happened that triggered warp storms, and most of those planets ended up being cut off. Around that time, the Emperor decided that we needed to go out and reclaim all those planets. We as a human race, we developed what they called warp engines, and they travel in through a hellscape, through a portal into a hell region, and then back out, and they're somewhere else in the galaxy.
So it's like the Jersey Turnpike.
Kind of like the Jersey Turnpike.
Okay. Or the expressway, or whatever it's called.
Right.
Travel through a hellscape to find out where you're going.
So, if you ever want to know like a movie reference here, there was a movie in the 90s called Event Horizon. It was like a space horror movie. This was actually based off the warp travel that they designed in Warhammer 40K.
Oh, okay.
So it is probably the most lore accurate Warhammer movie that's not an actual Warhammer movie that exists out there. And if you haven't seen it and you like horror movies, it's definitely worth watching. If you haven't, or if you have and you haven't watched it in a while, you could go back and update yourself, because it's a good
with a new vantage point.
Yeah, with a new vision. So basically, we spread to all these other planets. Not to get too far off track here, we spread to all these other planets. Some of them, as we expanded outward for the second time, we ran into other races. We ran into people that have occupied planets that we sent people to. We found new planets that we didn't know existed, because of course we use the warp, we come out somewhere different. Sometimes it works well, sometimes you end up on the wrong side of the world, or galaxy in this case. Sometimes you even end up getting to where you're going before you even left, because you go through the time change difference. So, and sometimes it's hundreds years later till you come out of the warp, even though it's felt like a day. So we ran into a lot of these things. So one of the big ones, of course, is like these robot skeletons we ran into. They have their own history, which I'm going to hold off on that for now, because but they basically go to sleep and they hunker down in these they call them tomb worlds. And they actually have like ziggurats or pyramids that they sleep under. We went back and got on those planets, and of course, when we, just like humans do, when we found something we didn't know what it was, we had to open it up and look, and we woke these Necrons up.
Like cicadas.
So, right, exactly, like cicadas.
Except murder cicadas.
Right, except cicadas with, electrical guns and
okay.
rifles that actually disintegrate your flesh right off your body.
Well, that's pleasant. That's
that's
nice.
We also ran into the orcs, like you would see in fantasy. There's an orc-like creature, and they actually just run around and fight stuff, and they're almost like British footballers in their attitude. So they're all like chest bumpy and, we're going to drink more and fight and brawl and knock your teeth out because teeth are their currency. So they can buy more stuff from other orcs. Yeah. So
like Mandos.
Yeah. Right.
Just like to beat things up.
Right. And then, of course, so they are also pretty hard to get rid of once you get orcs on your planet, because they're not a carbon-based humanoid. They're actually grow from a fungus. So when you kill an orc, it actually releases spores, which creates fungus on the ground, which will actually grow another orc under a rock. So take that, Tolkien.
See, this is wildly fascinating, and this is the kind of stuff where I want to go back in time in my DeLorean, sit down at the table with the folks who are coming up with these stories. Where did this idea come? Like, how did you get there? How did you come up with mushroom orcs that use teeth as currency? That's incredible.
So there was actually a game, and I'm going to say this was probably early 2000s. I'd have to check that to be sure, but probably early 2000s. No, probably earlier than that. Well, let's say turn of the century. Called
you make us sound way old now.
I know, right? Called Gorka Morka. And so Gork and Mork are the two orc gods, and one is brutally cunning and the other one is cunningly brutal. I don't know what the difference is, but there was a game that they based just around orcs, and all you did was jump in trucks and drive around the Badlands and shoot each other, and it was almost like in that same style as the Necromunda. Yeah, Pilgrim said football hooligans. And that's exactly right. They're just like football hooligans. So, so they created the whole backstory of the orcs when this came up.
And what was the name of it again?
It was Gorka Morka.
Gorka Morka.
Yep. Oh, and you got like 8 to 12 orcs, I think, and maybe a truck, maybe one on their motorcycles are actually like half tracks. So like the front half's like a motorcycle, the back half is like a tank. Oh, Gorka Morka was 97.
Okay.
So yeah, if you feel old, there you go.
Wow. Okay. Well, you were close. You said 2000, so you were kind of close.
Yep. So, and thank you, Susan.
We got a live fact checker.
Yep, we got a live fact checker. That's what we needed. So, and all that lore came from this game. They like that's the one good thing that Games Workshop always does is when they release anything, any book that they do, any army book that they come out with, like probably a half to 2/3 of the book is just lore on the units, the history of it, the potential or important battles, stuff like that. Everything's spelled out in the codexes, and the codexes they're a little pricey. That's probably the one thing that you'll get most off of anybody that plays the game is the codex are more expensive than other game systems, but you do get a full lore package with it. And every edition, every time they come out with a new codex, they put out more lore to go with it.
Once again, means that people sat down in a room somewhere, coming up with wild stories, and that's awesome. That's so
absolutely cool. I mean, the stuff that some of these guys came up with, and so like even back in the early 90s, there were actually units of Chaos Space Marines, and the whole squad, if you put they were called Noise Marines, and if you put the whole squad together, there was literally a singer, two guys with guitars, and one with a drum kit. I mean, this was a unit that you could buy and put on the table. And they
punk band.
Yeah, they were literally a punk band. And they were all Chaos Marines, so they were all, spiky armored. Imagine like Kiss or Guar or something like that with all the gear and the getup.
Insane Clown Posse.
Yeah, exactly.
This gets better and better with each minute.
Yeah, it's a trip, I'm sure. I can't imagine. So, like, somebody asked me a little while ago, like how would you explain 40K to somebody new? And I'm like, this was even before I considered doing this with you. And I'm like, I don't know, because I'm so far down the line that I actually have to pull back from my memory and bring it back so that I remember what happened to get to this point. Like almost like Star Wars. Like, imagine thinking back to just the original trilogy and you had nothing else to go off of.
Yeah.
No special editions, no remakes, no remasters, nothing like that. Just the original, who shot first. And you know what I'm saying? Like, the literal first time you saw Empire Strikes Back. Like, how do you get to that point where you remember that item for the first time? Because I mean, like, everything that's in here is like, it's compiled. It's like, oh, this new thing and this new thing and this is updated, and I try to keep going back and seeing what I can remember and what I can't.
And do these different factions? So, for instance, you mentioned Lord of the Rings a little while ago.
Yeah.
And so you had the orcs and the elves, who were kind of enemies, but then you had the dwarves and the elves, who sometimes were enemies, but then other times they were on the same side. Is that the same kind of thing with this, where sometimes the Necrons are with this group against that other group, and then other times we're mortal enemies? Like, is it that kind of storyline?
Well, yeah. I mean, when it comes to the lore, there's a lot of. So, let me start with. Most of the Imperium is xenophobic. They are anything that is not human. They are distrustful, hateful towards whatever, and anything that is. So there's a. I guess I should go back one more step. Essentially, there's three big groups of factions. There's the Imperium, which is all the human stuff, which does include the armies of the Imperium, the actual normal human soldiers, the Space Marines, the agents of the Imperium, and even there's a part robot faction, and they're the ones that actually make all the machines, so they kind of integrated all that into their normal day-to-day stuff. They're called the Adeptus Mechanicus. They're essentially they make all the tanks and the guns and everything that the Imperium uses, all the robots.
And they're
All,
part robotic themselves.
yes, they do.
Cyborgs.
Yes, they do modifications to themselves to make them. Some of them are actually like a brain in a jar with a robot body.
Like real mechanics.
Yeah, kind of.
Okay.
Kind of.
I know one of those.
At least one.
At least one.
So that's the one faction. So that's the Imperium. The other two are the Xenos, which are all the alien types, which is like the Necrons, or the cyborg, the robot skeletons. There's the Tyranids, which are almost like if you crossed the aliens from Alien, the xenomorphs from Alien, cross them into the huge bugs from Starship Troopers. If you've ever seen that.
Oh, that's frightening.
Cross them together, mash them together, and then you get the Tyranids as a result. And they actually operate from a hive mind from the ships that they travel in, which are also alive. And then there's the dwarves, which are the Leagues of Votan, which are technically clones now. They just came out with new lore not that long ago, so and they were just re-released as a faction. They were originally called the Squats back in the day.
Squats, as in like squat.
Right.
Okay.
Like when you're working out and you're doing squats.
Okay. Huh.
I think it was a very it was a very not nice terminology, so they came up with Leagues of Votan.
Okay.
And then of course the orcs are in there, and then both the there's two different factions of the Eldari, or the elves. There's basically the good ones and the dark ones, and the Dark Eldar, which are the Drakari. And they are both kind of, we can get into them later. The Eldar as a race basically got so crazy, they of course, elves, like any universe, they live forever. They live an incredibly long time. And they got to the point as a race where they were getting bored of everything. So instead of like fine tuning their craft, they kind of just got, let's say they were looking for all the pleasures and all the pains in the universe. And they did it so much that they actually spawned a god, a chaos god, which we'll get to in a second. When they did that, they realized that that god was trying to eat their souls. So there's two ways that they dealt with that. One is they decided to create enough pain to push the god away, and the other half traps their souls in stones when they die, so that they can be taken back to their planets and reused and put into machines and stuff like that.
So this has the bones of technology stuff, sci-fi robots and machine guns.
Yep.
And magic of Lord of the Rings, of elves and witches, and this is freaking crazy in the best possible ways.
Are you hooked yet? That's the question.
Well, the idea just gets more and more fascinating. And I'm just curious how all of that stuff translates into what you do when you get three of your pals together and say, "Hey, let's have a skirmish or a campaign or whatever." So how does that that work from crazy stories to now we're gonna put my painted pieces against your painted pieces?
Well, the story, to be honest with you, the story is all background and is technically unnecessary for the table game.
Oh, okay, okay.
Um,
It's like it's bonus stuff.
this is all bonus content.
Okay.
But in order to understand all the different factions in the game, you have to understand where they all come from.
Yeah. Corka
Um,
Morka.
yeah. So before I go back to the table, I did want to the last umbrella that they have is chaos. Um, and chaos is so they're like the evil side of the Imperium. They are literally the demons that show up in the warp, as well as the twisted versions of the Space Marines and the humans from the Imperium. So there are Chaos Space Marines, and they are in different legions. So there's different colors and styles and stuff like that. There are also actual demons, and Sue wants me to show some models. Let me see what I got available right here. And I think this is the box that would work the best. Let me set this off to the side here. Oh, these are actually the Eldar. These are not the ones I was looking for. So, to give you an idea, the Craft World Eldar. Let me get a hand up here. So, look here. Close my box. So the Craft World Eldar, that is an autarch, or essentially a general,
Complete with standard and everything.
complete with standard and everything. And he has his own presence on the battlefield. This one here. Good thing I left him close. So this should have chaos. Okay, so actually, before I do Chaos Marines, let me just set this aside real quick. A standard.
I love how organized you are. That's incredible.
Yeah, it's all a show. So, these are stormtroopers.
Yep.
Okay. And this is a Space Marine miniature.
Yeah, there's those big shoulder plates, the shoulder things I was talking about.
There's the big shoulder pads.
Yeah.
And Stu actually 3D prints the helmets. I still have to talk to him about getting one for me. He actually has the file to 3D print some helmets, and I want to get one. So that is a pretty much bulk standard Space Marine. Mine are Dark Angels, so they have green armor. Their weapons are essentially like 50 caliber grenade launchers, essentially. And then let me see here real quick before we move on. Yeah, there we go. This is a bulk standard human.
Okay. So not necessarily is all armored up, but
yeah, he has chest plate, and of course he's got small shoulder pads and the helmet. And then he's got a las gun, which is essentially a laser rifle.
Okay.
And then when you get to chaos, so I have demons here, and this is one of the demons. These are actually just called horrors.
Does he have 4 arms?
He has 3 arms.
3. Okay. Oh, I thought that little thing in the front was like a mutated arm.
No, he's got a tongue and 2 tails.
Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go. And I just got a delivery of more models. And then, so some of the Tyranids that we were talking about before, the ones that are essentially a cross
The
between.
xenomorph bug thing.
So we have this guy,
Holy
which is
crap.
a much bigger unit. And this guy actually, he's busts up out of the ground, and then this is one of their commander types. Let me get the light just right here. And this is a winged hive tyrant.
And I gotta say, I mean, I could. The story's fun. The game sounds great, but I gotta give you a lot of credit for the craftsmanship that you put into these things. They're gorgeous looking.
Yeah, and those are Logan's models. He plays Tyranids. So that's not even my paint job. He just started essentially last year doing really solid work.
Oh, soon.
I mean, you got your Space Marines before that. Well, probably 2 years ago, you got your Tyranids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, give
And
that kid
then-
the high fives, man. They look great.
Yep. Ken says high fives. They look great. So then there's Chaos Marines, which are different. They are same type of armor, shoulder pads, backpack. But of course, these have kind of an Egyptian theme to their helmets. These are Thousand Suns. They're all essentially from the same. All the Space Marines essentially came from the Emperor himself. He created the Space Marine program. So, and then of course, he is one of the big wizards for the Thousand Suns, sorcerer, actually.
That's a wild staff.
Yeah.
Too cool.
So, yeah, so that's the last faction. Last faction is Chaos. They actually have. I'm getting more stuff. Oh, okay. Some of the other Space Marine legions. This is Emperor's Children. They are
Funky purple.
almost like a pink purple color. Yep.
Yeah.
And then Logan's just bringing me miniatures. And then this is from the Death Guard, another Chaos Space Marine Legion.
Now, for the color schemes on these things, is there like a source book that says if you want to do this kind of legion or this kind of apologize if I'm using the wrong terms, this kind of faction?
Yeah.
That it needs these are the three primary colors. Like for instance, when you do a Boba Fett, doesn't matter if you're doing a Boba Fett in London or you're doing a Boba Fett in Sydney, they all have to have the same colors.
Right. So this, of course, is more open. You can kind of paint anything you want. They give you painting tutorials or tips. Let me see if I can open one up here. This is what one of the codexes looks like. That, of course, is my Dark Angels. Let me see if I can find it really quick. So they will give you sections like this.
Okay.
Painting guides. And then
there is some guidance then.
Yeah, and then if you go down into actually right there, these are different types of armies, different types of paint schemes for this army that are actually lore accurate, shall we say?
Okay.
But really, when it comes down to it, you can paint it however you want.
Gotcha.
So if you wanted to play like the Emperor's Children, the pinkish purple guy, you can paint him black with some purple, or you can paint him green, or you can paint him whatever you want. In fact, some of the lore accurate armies are actually some of them are actually very contradictory colors. Like Logan has he also does Blood Angels, which are all red. They're essentially their genetic flaw is that they need to drink blood.
So they're like vampires?
They're like vampires, yes. And then he has units that are gold, same army. So, but then there's other ones like my Dark Angels. There's ones that are black. There's ones that are just straight silver. Um, like Sue said here, she's seen people do Hello Kitty Space Marines.
Like pink
And
and white kind of things?
Yep. And I was actually just telling the boys that same thing that one of the conventions I was at a long time ago, they showed off. Oh, I wasn't there. I saw it online. But they do actual, like, they did a whole army and they replaced all the Space Marine heads with Hello Kitty circle heads. And they're all pink, and they even have the bows on them and stuff like that. And then I've also seen like people do like the Eldar. They have a unit, or the Dark Eldar. They have a unit called Witches. And I've seen ones where they do them all like anime girls with the big, huge bows on their back and the, almost like a video game anime kind of thing.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's really cool. Some of the, in fact, when the Knights first came out, one of the guys that I went to a tournament with, he ran 4 Knights, and they were the Avengers. He did Hulk and Thor and Iron Man, and I forget who the last one is, but he had 4 of them and just lined them up, and that was his whole army. He had the Avengers, and they were all painted, red and gold and green. The other one was green, and another one, and they were beautiful. He did a great job with them.
That's awesome.
Yeah, the fandom in this is ridiculous because there's so many people that are coming up with new stuff and new ideas, and everybody paints stuff different. So there's so many, like, you're never going to fight 2 of exactly the same army. Unless you're playing somebody, like, some people are very, very, like, this is the color scheme that Paint Workshop or Games Workshop or Warhammer has on their box, and I'm going to paint them that just like that. And that's okay too. I mean, they give you a painting guide, and in fact, if you get the app, it actually breaks down, paint this color and then paint this color and then paint this color, and you want to use shadowing with this color and dry brush with this color. And
so there's a Warhammer like instruction application?
Yeah.
Like a how-to guide sort of thing?
Yeah, it's the I think it's called the Citadel Color app. Citadel was the original name of the painting line that they had. So okay. All the paints, the brushes, all the the hobby tools, stuff like that. I opened the wrong app anyways. Yeah, Citadel Color app. And you can just say, oh, I want to paint a Thousand Sun Space Marine, and it will take you step by step all the colors, and then different options. So if you want to paint it in like solid colors, it'll tell you solid colors. If you want to use, they have like, I can't think of the name of it at the second, but it's like a thinner wash. You can. I use speed paint, so I can't think of the name of it. But it's the same thing. It's like a thinner color, and then you can pre-highlight and then just put the color on top of it.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's different ways to paint. There's different everything. Like there's so much stuff involved in this hobby.
And so we've picked our color scheme.
Yep.
We've decided we want to actually, before we even do that, like, when you pick the group of characters that you want to use, what's a a general guide for what you like? How do you know what kind of an army you want to have, or what kind of faction you want to be involved with? Does it have to do with the story, or does it have to do with what they can carry?
So my recommendation to anybody is find something that looks good to you, because if you don't like the way the models look, you're never going to paint them and finish them and get to the point where you want to play them. So if you want to, Space Marines are pretty bulk standard. Like, you can paint a Space Marine. There's a lot of people that don't like Space Marines, but like almost everybody I know that has some kind of army has a Space Marine army as well. It's just one of those things. Every box set comes with a Space Marine army of some type, whether it's Dark Angels or Ultramarines or some kind of good Black Templars, whatever. When the new rule box comes out, there's almost always a Space Marine in there. So you end up with a lot of Space Marine models. But realistically, what you need to do is pick an army that looks good to you, and maybe take into some consideration as to what they do on the tabletop. Because realistically, if you want to play something that just runs forward and fights in melee combat and doesn't care about shooting, you don't want to get an army that focuses on shooting and has rules that are based around shooting. If you want just like tons of hordes of models and just put as many models on the table that you can get on, you don't want to play like the Knights, that there's only 4 models in a box. That doesn't, and they're big and powerful. You want something different than that. But most people, you can kind of look at the box sets and say, okay, this is kind of what I need to do. And almost anybody that plays the game will help you pick an army if it was something you were interested in. Like, if you say, oh, I'm really into Warhammer, but I don't know where to start, you could just reach out on the internet and there'll be like 800 people that'll respond to you and say, oh, you should play this.
But I couldn't like mix and match. I couldn't have like one of those creepy crawly ones next to a Space Marine, next to the demon. I couldn't have an army that's a hodgepodge. Like,
not that far.
Okay.
You can mix some models. There are there's ally rules. So a quarter of your points can be put into a different faction, but it needs to be almost like an aligning faction.
Okay.
So you can't have, like, the big buggy ones don't really play nice with anybody. So now, we did do a fight here not that long ago where Michael's got the skeleton robots, Logan has the bugs, and he fought against me, but I was just like the defender against the 2 enemies. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Like, they didn't necessarily work together.
Gotcha. They were still fighting you individually, but they just happened to be doing it at the same time.
Right.
Okay.
So,
which is kind of like what life is like with 2 teenage kids anyway.
Oh yeah, it's exactly the same. And nothing changed. Except they weren't over there punching each other. They were just snapping at each other.
Yeah, rolling dice.
So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff you can do, especially, and this should all be taken with a grain of salt, because realistically, if you're playing in your basement with your buddies or in a local game store, you can kind of do whatever you want. If you want to put Tyranids and Necrons against Space Marines, you can do it. There's actually doubles tournaments out there. So I bring 1,000 points of my Dark Angels, and somebody else brings 1,000 points of their Eldar, and then I'm playing against a Tyranid player and a Imperial Guard player, for example. That can happen. There's tournaments like that all the time. In fact, there's actually some that you roll to see who you're playing with.
Oh, that's kind of cool.
So you have a random teammate against random opponents. So I've seen tournaments like that, and that's a lot of fun too. Because you really don't know what you're up against, and you need to kind of build your list so that you can take whatever comes at you, because you don't know what your partner's going to have your teammate's going to have, because you don't know who you're playing with, and you don't know what you're going to be fighting against, because that's all random too.
Gotcha. And is there like a hierarchy to the weapons? Like, flamethrower beats machine gun, but a bazooka beats a flamethrower.
Okay, so every weapon in the game, every unit has a data sheet. Okay. So I'll use the Thousand Suns for an example. They're Rubric Marines. They can have either bolt guns or they can have flamethrowers. Okay. Now, each individual model has a movement value. So they can move, for example, they move 5 inches. They also have a strength, or I'm sorry, 10th edition, they move strength. So they have a toughness value. They have a save, an armor save. And then they have a leadership ability. I think I'm missing one, but I think that's it. Movement, toughness, save. Oh, and how many wounds they have. And then they have an objective control. So objective control is when you move onto an objective, if somebody else moves within range of that objective, whoever has more value controls the objective for the points for the game.
Okay.
So if I have 10 guys at 2 OC each, that's a 20 total, where if the other guy's got 30 guys with 1 each, he's only got 30, or he's got 30, so he still beats me. But when it comes to the guns, like the weapons, so like they have a flamethrower or they have a bolt gun. So flamethrowers in the game, you don't have to roll the hit with. You just have to roll how many hits you're going to try to wound with. So you don't actually have to take aim and shoot it. You just, I roll a die 6. It has whatever you get on the die, 3 hits automatically. Where a bolt gun, you need to roll a die, and you get, let's say, a 3 or better to hit. So if you roll a 3, you still hit with that one shot.
Okay.
And then, of course, each weapon has a strength value, which you compare to the toughness of whatever you're shooting, and you make a roll to see if you wound them after you make the shots.
And how do you keep track of the shots on each of the health on each of the characters while you're playing?
Either dice or markers. A lot of things, like typical units, they only have 1 or 2 wounds per model. So once you take off, let's say you have a 2 wound model, once that squad takes 2 wounds, you remove the model.
And that goes over in the casualty area of the board.
Yeah, and then he's done for the battle, unless, of course, you have some kind of rule that brings him back. There's enough of that. Between, different ways that you play and different units can come back. The Thousand Suns are very magical, so they have essentially wizards and clerics that hang out with them. They're all considered sorcerers, but some of them bring people back to life. Other people shoot, magic missiles to get rid of the enemy. So then the last thing you would do is, let's say I would hit you and then wound you. The next thing, you would have an armor save, and every weapon also has a armor penetration ability. So -1, -2. So if you have a 3+ armor save, and everything's on a die 6, so that's the easy part. If you have a 3 or better, and I have an armor penetration of -2, you now have to roll a 5 or better in order to not get wounded. So,
and can you heal characters during the game?
Yes, there are some rules where you can heal. There are some units that, like I said, you can bring some. There are some units that can bring units back to life. There's actually some units that if they fail a save bad enough, they could lose guys. The basic humans, if they fail a leadership check, um, they can actually have one of their leaders shoot a guy to make them pass their leadership check. So basically, an old World War II Russian style where they shoot a guy, get back in the fight or you're next, that kind of thing.
Wow, this is it's interesting how we got the fantasy element of it, we have the sci-fi element of it, and then to that end, there's the real world military history strategy kind of stuff. Because you even said that they have one of these tournaments that takes place in Normandy, France.
Yep. Yep.
So there's that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and well, the Astra Militarum, which is the human soldiers, the Imperial Guard, they represent the human faction of the game. Their tanks, I don't have their tanks nearby, or else I would grab them. Their tanks are actually fashioned. Their big heavy tanks are fashioned after World War I tanks.
Like a Panzer tank, that kind of thing, or
before that, like World War One.
Oh, okay.
And then they have APCs, armored personnel carriers, that are almost World War II era looking. So that it's basically a long tank body, but with a small turret, and then you can stuff guys in the back of it.
Now, you were talking too earlier that some people 3D print characters.
Yep.
So are they 3D prints of existing models, meaning somebody scanned a model and now you just 3D print the same thing? Or are they like a Todd Lake special where he designed this Marine to have this pose, and so it's
a little bit of both.
Okay.
There are people that just scan, especially the tanks, because you can filament print them. A lot of the tanks can be 3D printed. There are people that resin print individual models, like Space Marines or stuff like that. In fact, Dan, he does a lot of 3D printing. He printed me out a Dark Angels bike, guy on a bike, and then he also printed me out, excuse me, a Space Marine. They're called Hellblasters. They actually shoot. They have guns that shoot plasma balls. So they basically shoots a ball of plasma. It goes out and explodes. So it has the chance of spraying people around it, stuff like that. And it eats through armor and stuff like that.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah. So there are plenty of people that 3D print stuff. I don't really get in. My filament printer doesn't. I could probably do tanks, but I can't individual models. It just doesn't hold up.
Too fine.
Yeah, it's too fine.
Okay.
I'm sure there's people that can do it. I don't have the skill to do it. And I mean, there's a lot of details in these models. It's really hard. Most of the prints that I've seen are not as clean or as detailed as the models that you get from Games Workshop or from
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So there's a lot of ways to get stuff. I have a ton. This whole tote back here, this is all 3D printed terrain. And of course, this is an unfinished model. This is an Imperial Guard Valkyrie, and this is based off of the I forgot what it was. The Vietnam helicopters, the ones that the airborne they dropped into Vietnam with.
Okay.
The what were they? It's eluding me right now. Not the Comanches, the Apaches.
Okay.
So I think that's it. I don't know. I'm sure somebody will correct me if I'm wrong.
Where's our live fact checker when we need her?
Right?
Must be on break.
I'm sure she's up there somewhere.
Googling helicopter from Vietnam.
Right? So, yeah. So, I mean, let's see. I got to check my notes here. I don't even know where we left off.
I think we left off at we're getting ready to step into the types of battles that you can have, the types of games that you can have.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So, thank you. So games range anywhere from Combat Patrol, which is right around 500 points, and then the standard games roll up to about 3,000 points. You can do bigger ones, but usually they're not as common. Let's put it that way. A standard tournament game is right around 2,000 points. Some places do 1,500, and they should last about 2.5 hours. That's usually the time slot that they give you for a 2,000 point fight. There are 23 different Combat Patrol boxes right now. So that is quite a number of them are Space Marines. Because, like I said, Space Marines are kind of the hot ticket. And I think I wrote that down somewhere. In fact, I know I did. Find my physical notes. Oh, there they are. Yeah. 12 of them are Space Marines. 6 are armies. No, that's not right. Oh, that was all the factions altogether. So all the factions individually, there's 12, 18, 33 different factions separately. And then, of course, there's a lot of room for doing your own thing. But there's 12 different Space Marine armies right now. There's 6 different armies of the Imperium, 7 different Chaos armies, and 8 different Xenos armies. And of course, like I said, they have that broken down into 23 different combat patrols, which is like the best way to get into the game at the moment, because you can buy the combat patrol box and they're like $174 for the whole box. You usually get like somewhere between 25 and 35 models.
Unpainted
on sprue. I don't have a box here. No, I don't have a box here, but just comes in a big box, one big box. All the sprues, you got to cut them out, trim all the edges off of them, prime them, paint them, and then they even give you the instructions as to how the combat patrol's built. If you wanted to get into that, what you would do, the easiest way to do that is to buy a combat patrol box of whatever faction that you like. All the rules to play combat patrol are online. Everything's online. So the simple game rules, the rules for all the combat patrols, particular, including every single model that's in there or every squad that's in there, everything's in the rules specifically. Are right online on the right on the community page. All right, and Sue says it's a combo of an Apache and a P-38 Lightning. Here we are. Thank you, Susan. You're the best.
I can't say enough how much I adore her.
Me too. That's why I keep her around. So, yeah. So that's the best way to get in. And if you really look at it A lot of people gripe because it seems expensive. I mean, it's almost $200 to get into a game, and then you still need paint, you still need glue, and a hobby knife or an X-Acto blade or whatever you want to use. But if you really think about it, if you get a good quality model kit, you're going to pay that by itself, and then you're going to put it on a shelf, and maybe you'll play with it once in a while, show your buddies, something like that. But realistically, you're going to play possibly hundreds of games with these models, and for the $180 just to get started, it's really a good investment. And I don't know why Games Workshop doesn't hire me as a promoter, but
at least get it like one of the affiliate deals.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it figured out, but I haven't gotten there yet. But
if you go to whatever workshop and type in the code TR Painting 20, you get a 20% discount. That's not real, so please.
It's not real yet.
It's not a real thing. I'm just the idea's out there. I want to put it in the universe.
Right. So yeah,
I keep trying to put in the universe having Kristen Baver come on our show as a guest.
Absolutely, she needs to sign up. And maybe we'll get Henry Cavill or something on my show.
Yeah, that'd be fun. I mean, Kathleen Kennedy has said she'd like to come on the show. She's just really busy.
Yeah, I understand that.
And Dave Filoni's got his hands full. So
yeah, he's doing too much. Oh, Sue put it up there. Hashtag Warhammer influencer. There you go.
40K, of course.
Yeah, of course. Well, I'll cover anything, really.
All right, fair enough. All right.
So, yeah, so that's the best way. That's the best way to get models on the table. That's the best way to start playing. I mean, it's not really a thing that you're just going to go out and buy stuff and put it on your shelf. I mean, you really want to play the game. That's kind of where it's at. I mean, there are plenty of people that buy the models, build them, paint them, and put them on a shelf. I mean, I have tons of them myself, but they're usually because they've retired. They've come out with newer versions, or, they're up in my curio cabinet between games or whatever, but try to keep the dust off of them. But, I mean, this shelf right here, this is all Warhammer models. And some of them I still play with, and some of them are actually quite old, and some of them are Star Wars Legion.
One of the things I find quite interesting about this particular game is it seems to be a combination of several things. You got the funky story behind the scenes, like the universe, the lore that if you wanted to, you could spend a whole bunch of time getting into. And from what I understand, I could be wrong, but I thought there were, like Warhammer novels and, that kind of thing, plus video games outside of the tabletop stuff. Then there's the creative aspect of it. So, painting the models, deciding how you want your army to look on the table. And then the big piece, the social piece, like this gathering together with people you've never met before, or gathering together with people that you've known for a really long time, and just playing. Just playing. Like there's something, even though it is a murder game.
It is. It's a war game. There's no sugarcoat.
That's probably a better way. It's a war game. It's a what did we call it earlier? A turn-based strategy game. Yeah. So there's that part, but it's something that's done socially. You can either gather people at your place, you can go to their place, or you can go to this other place, and as intense as you want it to be. So it can be a handful of friends, or it can be, I'm going to go to Hawaii and enter this international tournament in order to win a giant sword.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
It's really cool. I mean, like I said, like there's some, and there's some in all over regions all over the world, you know. So like there's a yeah. Sue says there's a lot of snacks and drinks involved as well.
Oh, of course.
But
Some of the best and worst decisions have been made with snacks and drinks involved.
that's right. That's right. So, but yeah, I mean that's definitely the big thing, like the social aspect of Warhammer 40K. I have met so many people because of playing Warhammer. I have gotten friends involved just because they're like, oh, well, what's that thing that you're doing now? Or what are you looking up online or whatever? And I'm like, oh, well, this new thing came out and I want to, you know, I try to keep up on everything. So, I mean, like two of my buddies at work, I got one into it and he's a big collector. So he collected pretty much every unit that he could get his hands on. Just because I bought him one because I thought he would like to paint it. And then the one other guy at work, I just mentioned it to him and he's like, oh, I played that back when I was in high school, or I forget if it was high school or just after high school or something like that. And like just mentioning it and bringing it to the forefront, he's like, I need to go get more models. I need to go do I'm going to play games with you. And in fact, he's the one that he was the big winner of the giveaway. So he is going to be on one of these weeks. I just got to get schedules and stuff like that straightened out with him.
So Sue was right. You've earned the title of #Warhammer influencer.
Yeah, I think so.
You just proved it in a matter of a couple moments.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm this passionate about Warhammer and Star Wars. I don't know how there's time for anything else in my life most of the time.
Well, snacks and drinks. You've got you work a little bit so you can buy snacks and drinks and paint, and what else do you need? Maybe airline tickets if you want to, compete in a tournament to win a giant sword, but still.
The important part is having the money to buy airline tickets.
Yeah.
And to buy more miniatures and to buy more cool.
Which is why Warhammer needs to start, giving you some affiliation points.
Right. Right.
Table ready 20 for a 20% discount on all your Warhammer needs.
That would be great. Yeah. That would be great. So we're working on that.
Well, you keep doing shows like this, and you keep getting that stuff out there on YouTube, and get those folks hanging out with you. Who knows where this could end up for you? That's awesome. I'm so glad that you were willing to have me come on and be part of this.
No, I really appreciate it. I mean, like, this was something that I was kind of considering, and just getting the opportunity to have somebody to talk to that doesn't really know Warhammer and to, for lack of a better word, influence you as to what goes on in a typical in being a fan of Warhammer and being involved in the lore and everything else. Just to kind of get that out there, and this is, how do I explain this to somebody who's never seen it before? I mean, it was really a good thing.
And we've been going at it for almost 2 hours, so it's incredible how much is involved.
Oh my, I didn't even realize that. So I know you play some games and you read books. So if you wanted to learn more about the lore, there are tons of novels. In fact, the Horus Heresy, which is a part that I didn't even touch on yet, and is a big part of the history of 40K. It's like 58 books in the Horus Heresy line by itself.
Sheesh.
The end of the Horus Heresy, I think, is 8 books by itself. And then just the regular timeline, there are books that are written that started back in 90-something novels and are still being written today. So there's new ones that come out all the time. just like Star Wars. If you wanted to experience a video game, of course, the biggest title right now is Space Marine 2. And the detail and story that they put into that, and even the multiplayer aspect that they put into that game is amazing. Like, I try to sneak away and get as much Space Marine 2 time as I can, because it's just that fun of a game.
Is it a console game or a PC game or a phone game?
It's a PC or console.
Okay. So like PlayStation 5 or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I have Xbox, so I play on the Xbox. My boys actually have it on PC because they have PCs that run really well. They have gaming PCs. So, you know.
I'm just kidding.
If you want more, and of course you play as a Space Marine, you play as a lieutenant in the Space Marines. And then eventually there's operations where you play just a single soldier, and it's like a first-person shooter experience. And you actually get to fight the big bugs, the Tyranids, and then the Thousand Suns later in the game. And again, like, they did a phenomenal job with it. If you don't have a console that can run like that, find a copy of Dawn of War, Warhammer Dawn of War. Again, this is more like the tabletop that you'll see, tabletop game where you actually get to spawn squads in. It's like a real-time strategy game.
Nice.
So you get like a captain, or you can play as, I think, like 8 different factions in the final one. And excuse me. So then you get like a captain, and then you can spawn units in, and you build your base like Command and Conquer or Warcraft or something like that. I'm trying to think of another example, but you spawn bases in, and then you can build more units, and you can go, finish off your opponent. Dark Tide's another good one that's like a first-person shooter. Not quite as good as Space Marine 2, but it's a lot of fun. You get to play as different units for the Imperial Guard. And rumor is they're planning on the Total War series. If you've ever heard of that for the PC,
I haven't.
They do a lot of historical stuff. The next one that they're doing is World War I, and then the one after that is supposed to be Warhammer 40K.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, of course, if you want to learn more, there's YouTube. There's a show on Amazon Prime. I think I told you about Secret Level. That's got an episode of Space Marine. There's a dozen good podcasts. And then if you don't have people to play with in your area, or you don't want to collect the models or something like that, there's actually a tabletop simulator program online that you can play with, and you can build your armies and stuff like that. There's a lot of people that do that in order to kind of like build their armies up.
And just get practice time, it sounds like.
Yep.
That's awesome.
Oh, and I forgot. Thank you, Susan. If you ever played Power Wash Simulator, there's a DLC where you get to clean 5 or 6 different Imperial themed units. So if you've ever played Power Wash Simulator, you go through and clean houses and clean cars and stuff like that. They actually have a Power Wash Simulator where you're dressed as one of the Adeptus Mechanicus guys with the red robes, and you actually have like a carbine. They call it a water carbine or something like that, and you can spray down and clean all the couple different units from 40K. And if you haven't played the game, play it. As dumb as it sounds, it's one of the most addicting games out there. And it's a very chill game.
There's no end to the games, that's for sure.
No, there's no end. They did have a addition onto Magic the Gathering, where they had Warhammer 40K games. And also, I know there was a Munchkin, there's a Monopoly, there's a Risk, so they merchandise well at this point.
I'm just waiting for the Warhammer 40K fruit snacks. Like the gushers.
Believe it or not, I don't know that there's fruit snacks, but they actually sell a line of candles that are scented for different legions of Space Marines.
Who is buying a Warhammer themed scented candle?
I have no idea, because one of them is the Death Guard, which is literally like the god of. They follow the chaos god of plagues and diseases. So I don't even want to know what that smells like.
Does it smell like barbecue? Like flamed meat?
I'm thinking like rotten bananas, kind of that over sugary.
Yeah,
but I don't know because I refuse to buy one.
Yeah, that's the candle that I would get is rotten bananas. Yeah, it's rotten bananas or smelly garbage, like one of those, or
yeah, trash truck juice.
Yeah, trash, exactly. Yeah, dumpster gravy.
Right. So
now here's a wild question, and we could probably end on this one.
Yeah.
Is there a phrase or an inside joke that I could use to let folks know that I'm in the Warhammer 40K Cool Kids Club? Like, is there like I have friends everywhere, the new line from Andor, or May the Force be with you? Is there a 40K code phrase?
Well, it would probably be for the Emperor.
For the Emperor, okay.
Or if you're not an Imperium follower, it would be Death to the False Emperor. But that one doesn't have the same ring as For the Emperor. Anybody can say For the Emperor. And
okay, I can get behind that one. For the Emperor.
Yep, exactly.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, so look, this has been fantastic. Thank you for coming on and doing this with me. Let's see what we got here.
You just continue to amaze me.
Oh, I forgot. If you're an orc, you would scream "wah."
Like with my hands raised, wah!
Yeah, wah.
Okay.
I'm not going to do it louder than that because I don't want to blow anybody's eardrums out.
That one I probably do more before I do the For the Emperor, because I'm more of a dance kind of guy anyway. So because you can get some rhythm in it. Yeah.
Wah.
Wah. Yeah. Reminds me of Fozzie Bear. Waka waka waka.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
In fact, that's a very common thing. I'm surprised I didn't think of it. That's a very common thing because all the orc armies have the rule you can shout "wah" in the game, and it gives you a bonus for that entire turn. And good orc players will shout in the middle of a tournament. They will shout "wah."
Kind of like a motivational kind of thing.
Yep. They will shout it when they declare it for the round.
Yeah, see, that's the sweet stuff right there that I'm talking about. So that lets me know I'm in with the cool kids. If I'm just randomly in a store yelling "wah" and everyone bows to me, yeah, that makes sense.
Yep, that would do it.
I love it.
So, all right. So, thank you for coming on again. This was incredible. This was a lot of fun. Even the research for this was a lot of fun. But of course, you and I talking together, that's the best. So, again, do you want to put out where people can find you as a Star Wars fan?
Yeah, of course. So there's the single show, The Rambling Star Wars Fan, and I'm happy to announce that I finally have 10 subscribers on YouTube. I'm also on anywhere where you can catch podcasts, because it started off as an audio show only, and now I have 3 videos up on YouTube. And like I said, finally at the double digits in subscribers. There's our show that we've put together. We've been doing it for about a year now. Have a handful of episodes out there.
Yep.
Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy with Todd and Ken, where we talk mostly about Mandalorians and bounty hunters and those kind of folks in the galaxy, both from a story standpoint, the lore standpoint, but also because, both of us are official Mando mercs, so we like the costuming aspect of things. And then every Wednesday night on YouTube, or almost every Wednesday night on YouTube, you can find me on the Inflatable Falcon with Mike Hinton and sometimes John Scalise. And then I also have a guest spot on the Bantha Milk podcast. We often do this thing called Around the Dejeric Table. So we're just asking each other random questions related to Star Wars. Because you also have a bunch of podcasts too, right?
Yeah, I have this one, of course, and I have the one with you, which keep an eye out for soon, because we're going to finish our name game from our last episode. And then, of course, I play D&D with my two boys. That comes out every Thursday on YouTube. So there's two different campaigns going on, and that's Lake Clan Legends. Our newest episode released today, and you can look for it. It's Muddy Hippo People, I think is the title. So if you know, you know, right? They are currently trapped inside a castle that is sinking into the mud. So it's kind of exciting, and we'll see where our heroes go from there.
Awesome.
Yeah. So just to sign off here, us at Table Ready Painting, we're here to help you and your models become table ready, and we want to thank everybody that did watch for watching, and we'll see you real soon.
Wah!
Wah! For the Emperor!
For the Emperor.